Often an accountant will face an accounting issue that he or she hasn't seen before. When that happens, the accountant will refer to the FASB standards, which are the authoritative rules. In 2009, those were reorganized to simplify the research process. So this codification database now is the single authoritative source of U.S. GAAP. Previously, there was a 5-level hierarchy, and it was rather complicated. So life is much easier now when it comes to accounting research. And I do want to caution, not that you're going to find it totally easy always, but it is more simple. But so you, as an accountant, you have to be able to differentiate between what sources are authoritative. If you're using an authoritative source, you know that what you're doing is accurate. If you use a non-authoritative source, well, then it really depends. You want to weigh the relevance of the situation, what's the guidance provided, and what's the reputation of the author. For instance, the FASB statements of concepts. Well, those are actually the conceptual framework, which was Chapter 2 of your textbook. Those are not authoritative. However, if this FASB codification database, if it does not provide guidance on a particular issue, then you're going to find yourself often coming back to the conceptual framework and using it as a guide to reason your way through. And the reason you would do that is because the conceptual framework is what the FASB uses to make its decisions. So if the FASB is using the conceptual framework to make accounting rules, then we want to use the conceptual framework when we want to decide how to record something and the FASB hasn't previously addressed it. Here are other items that are non-authoritative but are often used by accountants for guidance, including your textbook. So you don't want to throw your textbook away or sell your textbook. You'll often use it as a guidebook. You are going to be able to access the FASB codification database through this website. When you get there, you're going to put in this username and this password. So let's go online and see what it's going to look like. So the username, you'll plug it in. I've already used it, I've been here before, and I've saved it. So you'll enter in that username. You're going to enter in that password and hit submit. You have two choices. For us, we want the FASB standards, not the governmental standards. Okay, and now it's coming up, and then we have a site license that we need to agree to. Let me see if I enlarge this, I can get it to come down. There we go. So on the site license, you want to just go to the bottom of it. Keep scrolling, it's really, really long. And you want to accept that. And again, for the student, you are not having to pay for this database. Park University has already purchased it for you. Okay, so this is the string that's going to come up. So let me familiarize you with some things. There are really going to be about 4 choices you have to research something. One is just this search box where you'll enter in keywords, and you're probably familiar with doing a research that way. Second way is over here on the left-hand side. If I knew the reference number, then I could put in a number here and hit go to, and it would take me where I want to go. Usually only experienced researchers are going to use the go-to box, although once in a while you'll find it'll be helpful even for you, and I'll show you after a bit. Otherwise, a third way would be using these choices over here. For instance, presentation. I might, if I wanted to research something on the balance sheet, go to the balance sheet, and I might want to look at one of these particular items. Or the income statement, look at extraordinary and unusual items. So I could look at presentation that's really mostly the financial statements, or the elements of the financial statements, assets, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, expenses. And then it gets into particulars down here. So that's a third way of researching. And then the fourth way would be just looking at a glossary. If I'm wanting to look up a definition of something, I could just go there. So really there's kind of 4 tools that you may use as you're looking at this. Okay. The other thing I would also point out is that as you research, you might want to look at, what are some new, what's some new updates, Perhaps what is the FASB, what are they looking at right now, what's being proposed. The conceptual framework, those are the concept statements, chapter 2 out of your textbook. So if I want to know more specifics of that, I could go here. Well, let's pull up, go back to our class notes for this. Oh, and I forgot, I wanted to point that out when we were there. The other thing on this key page of the Codification website would be the help. So I did want to point that out to you, and I put that on your class handout. But how to use the codification in particular, you'll probably find that very helpful. And specifically, Chapter 11 would be the one I would mostly refer you to. It's a very long help book, so I think you'll mostly, if you go to Chapter 11, what I covered today may be adequate for you. If you want to know more specifics, go to Chapter 11. Okay, and then coming down here, areas on the home page, we really have already gone through this. We're going to see where there will be topics. We saw that before, like assets, and there will be subtopics, sections, and paragraphs. And we've gone through all of this so far. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at my demonstration case number 1. So the Felix Company is preparing its financial statements. At the end of 2015, the company purchased a building for $100,000 by making a down payment of $20,000 cash and signing an $80,000 mortgage. The president, Melissa Barnes, understands that debt transactions are considered a financing activity from a business perspective, and she also understands that the purchases of long-term assets are investing. Consequently, Melissa is pondering how to report this transaction on the statement of cash flows, and she's looking to you, her CPA. So we're going to research this and write a short memo to her. And so that's the gist of what we're looking at today. How to research using this database, and then just as important, how would an accountant communicate that to your client, to your boss, to your coworker, or even sometimes just to a file. So what's that going to look like? And it's got to be very professional looking, and there's a certain organization structure to that memo. Well, let's go back up here and talk about the accounting a little bit. Clearly, this $20,000 cash payment is going to go on the cash flow statement. That's that makes sense. So that surely is going to go on the cash flow statement. But what about the $80,000? What do we do with that? Because $80,000 is part of buying the building, right? If you buy long-term assets, that's an investing activity. And also, that $80,000 is from borrowing money. Well, if you borrow long-term debt, that's a financing activity. And the cash flow statement reports operating, investing, and financing activities. So here's the crutch. What do we do? If we have a financing and investing activity, how do we report that? Normally those get reported on the cash flow statement, but if it's not a cash in or a cash out, what do we do? So because think about it, if you only report the $20,000 cash paid for the building, it looks like we only spent $20,000 for the building, when the building cost $100,000. So it would be misleading if we only report the $20,000. So let's go to the conceptual framework, let's go to the database, I said that wrong, and look at how we might research this. So let's go to the cash flow statement. So let's go presentation, and let's go look at the cash flow statement. So I'm going to click on all of that and see what it brings up. So I have some choices here. I look through all of these. None of them really seem like a fit, so I'm going to go to overall. So I look at that, and then I have some choices. So already we're starting to see numbers, right? We had presentation, now we have 230 statement of cash flow, and 10 is overall. Well, we could do maybe the objectives, so I click on that. I'm just, again, researching, looking for ideas. So I read through these paragraphs. It tells me the objective, but really that's not going to tell me all that I need to know. So I'm going to go back to overall. I could look at scope. Glossary, other presentation matters. Let's look at other presentation matters. Maybe, because this is looking at something a little bit outside of the box of a cash flow. So we have form and content, what's cash and equivalent, gross and net cash flows, classification, class from investing, pending, financing, operating. Not really anything that I'm quite finding. So let's go back again to overall and see what else we might find. Well, let's look at the next one, disclosure. Maybe instead of reporting it, we disclose it. So let's see if that's going to be an option or a fit for us. So we look at cash equivalents, interest and income taxes, and all right, here we go. Non-cash investing and financing activities. This is exactly relevant to us. So information about all investing and financing activities that do not result in cash receipts or cash payments shall be disclosed. These disclosures may be either narrative or summarized in a schedule, and they shall clearly relate to the cash and non-cash aspects of transactions. All right, so we can see right now it needs to be disclosed. Paragraph 4 gives us examples. And here, when I look at the second one, this is exactly what we have. Acquiring assets by assuming directly related liabilities, such as purchase of a building by acquiring a mortgage. There we go. That's our situation. Some transactions are part cash and part non-cash. That's also our situation. Only the cash portion shall be reported in the statement of cash flows. Okay, so that verifies that $20,000 will be reported in the cash flow statement, and the $80,000 is going to be disclosed then. The last paragraph then also tells us if there are only a few non-cash transactions, it might be convenient to include them on the same page as the cash flows. That makes sense because if I do disclose it in the notes, the reader may not notice it, right? The notes to the financial statements can be 20, 30 pages long. It's easy for things to get lost there. So it would be better if we put it on the cash flow statement as a disclosure on the cash flow statement, not reporting it, but disclose it on the cash flow statement. Okay, we have found our answer. Now we're ready to draft our memo. Now, before I draft my memo, I'm going to do something here because I want to be able to put, all of this good information, I want to put all of this good information in my memo. So I'd like to probably just be able to cut and paste or copy and paste into my memo. Now if I were to do that directly from the website, it'll get pretty ugly looking. So in order to do that, go down to print. I could do printer friendly. I can do printer friendly with the table of contents. That's what I want to do because when I do that, it gives me the full reference number, right? Section 230, 10, 50, and 2, paragraph 1, 2, 3, etc. So when I get to referencing to the FASB codification standard in my memo, I'm just going to come here and now I will copy and paste from this. All right, well, let's go look at what my memo is going to look like. Let me get back up to it. Okay, so the memos really they should be organized a certain way. Date, who it's from, who it's to, whom it's from, what's it regarding, and the facts. When you write your facts for your memo, do not copy and paste out of the case. This is my wording for this memo. Felix Company purchased a building for $100,000 with a $20,000 down payment and signed a mortgage for the remaining $80,000. So reword it, condense the case into your own words. There were 2 issues. So the next section, what are the issues? Well, I made it into 2. How do we report the $20,000 partial cash payment? And what to do with the $80,000 non-cash financing and investing. How should that be reported or disclosed? So notice the sequence. general information at the front, at the top. What are the facts? What are the issues? And then we're going to state our conclusion before we show our research. So we're going to tell the reader, here's the answer. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll tell them why they should do what we're telling them to do. What's our reasoning? What's our support? So for the first question, notice I referenced the paragraph of the FASB Accounting Standards Codification, and then I put the ASC. So now every time after that, I don't have to write all of that Accounting Standards Codification out. I'll just put ASC and the reader will know what I'm referring to. But then I tell them, report it in the body. Notice that the standard didn't show us what it would look like, but as an accountant, our client or whomever we're reporting to is going to want to know, well, what should it look like? Here we're telling them the theory. Secondly, though, you need to just tell them, what is that going to look like? What would the reporting look like? So there is that. And then number 2, I tell them that they should disclose the non-cash portion. And then I say we recommend including it at the bottom of the cash flow statement, because if they do that, it will more clearly communicate the transaction. So it's better to do it this way if we only have one. And then here in italics, I show them, well, what would it look like? So here's going to be the note at the bottom of the cash flow statement. The reasoning in this case was very easy. I just say, okay, here's the paragraph out of the FASB Accounting Standards Codification, and then here's where I just copied and paste. Number 2, again, here's pertinent paragraphs for that, and then I just copied and pasted the relevant paragraphs. So that gives you an idea what that's going to look like. Okay, so we researched this case going over here using presentation or something. Well, let's go in and look at, what if I wanted to do it, a little different? What if we wanted to research it using the search box? So let's use the search box and look at, I've already did this before. What I wrote in there is investing activity not involving a cash payment. So what if I typed in there, investing activity not involving a cash payment, and then I hit go. So when that happens, I've got 14 results. I could look at, so I might look at this, other presentation matters. I probably wouldn't choose to do that one. That one doesn't seem a good fit. Disclosure, we know that is the answer. Again, if I kind of scroll down, I'm going to see a lot of these other ones are not the right answer, and I inadvertently clicked on the disclosure one, and you can see this is what came up. Okay, the other way is once I know the reference 230 dash, what was it, 230 dash 10 dash 50. Once I know that, I could just do the go-to box. So let's say you were researching something else, but you wanted to come back to your original research on this cash flow issue. So once you know the reference number, you could just plug that in. And then the last one, this master glossary. Well, what if I wanted to research it that way? Well, I might choose like I. These are all, so if I do I, all the vocabulary words with I are going to come up. I chose I because I really wanted to look at something like investing. So let's go down here to investing. Here we go, investing activities. I could go through this. We already know 230 is going to take us to the cash flow statement. And if I clicked on that, that eventually is going to get me where I need to go to find my overall solution. Okay, so that's the 4 ways of using the database for research. Okay, so that's case number 1. Case number 2, actually, I'm not going to go through the research on case number 2 because by now you probably are getting the idea of how to do the research. Case number 2, I really just mostly want to go over the memo to reinforce how to organize that memo and write it out. This is a machine that was purchased. Actually, just go to the memo and let's look at it. For the second case, Here's what it would look like. Again, date, to, from, regarding, the facts. I reworded it. We have a company purchased a machine at the beginning of the year that is currently used in the factory. The machine was recorded at cost. The manager asked us to research if there are additional accounting issues for the machine. So here's the issue. How should a machine used in production be reported in the financial statements? How do we report it? Then I give the conclusion. I went in, I found this paragraph very much told us the theory. Report the machine on the balance sheet at cost less accumulated depreciation. Then I went a step further. Here's what the balance sheet could look like. We didn't have numbers, so I used X's. And also, your client's going to want to know what would the journal entry be. So I gave them the debit and credit. And again, I just used X's because we didn't have dollars in this case. But what I want to emphasize is go beyond the theory in your memo. Show the reader how would it look. And then lastly, your support. And again, I just copied and pasted the documentation for that paragraph. Okay. All right, last thing, going back, again, I'm back here on your class notes for this, and I'm going to bring up your assignment. Here is your case assignment. So this is the one that you're going to research, and you're going to write a memo and turn that in to your instructor. Good luck. I think you'll find it to be a lot of fun.